I would like to ask the Minister of National Security and Peace, if I have a friend and my friend purports to engage in an illegal activity and then solicits my assistance in carrying out that illegal activity, what should my response be? Because we have a topical issue that we're going to be discussing in this episode. So, welcome to the ACTA Podcast. We are on episode 2, and in this episode, we'll be discussing borders for rent inside the US-Jamaica Deportee deal. And at first, when I read about the issue, I didn't think that it was significant enough to warrant an episode. But after subsequent press releases and interviews with the media, and hearing from the Minister of National Security and Peace and from the Minister of Education and the justifications proffered with respect to this third country national agreement that the Jamaican government has entered into with the US, I find that there is significant confusion surrounding this memorandum of understanding. But then arising from the multitude of conflicting information that has come to the fore, I find that this is my forte, right? And I find that this is something that I should be talking about. So the main question that we're asking, or that we're proposing to the government of Jamaica, is why did Jamaicans learn about this agreement from a newspaper rather than from their own government? And so we're going to, the memorandum of understanding, according to the government of Jamaica, was signed on June 10th, 2026. And then 6 days later, the Gleaner broke the story. And at first, of course, the government denied this, characterized it as misinformation, right? So Parliament was unaware of this deal. The opposition was unaware of this deal. The public was unaware of this deal. And so the idea around transparency, especially when we're dealing with an issue that is of material importance to the Jamaican people, is now brought to the fore. Now, I think the first thing I need to establish is what is a third country national, because this is the thing that always happens. You have a situation where they make up these terms. They literally make it up. They make up these terms and they come and they give these press conferences and they use these words and nobody understands what they're talking about. And so instead of bringing clarity and understanding to the situation, they engage in this circus of officialdom. I'm just making that word. The circus of performance and pageantry that at the end of the day, they come on the TV and they do a press conference and they talk a bunch of words and the average person is no more clear on what the issue is than before they did the press conference. So what is a third country national? Because this is the first time I am hearing this term being used, and it's arising from the Gleaner article, which purported that Jamaica is seeking to, import, at least 10,000 deportees. And the reason why this is so important to us is because of the secrecy that's surrounding the issue. So a third country national is someone who is being removed from a country that they are not a resident of to a country that they are not a resident or national of. So for example, let's say you have somebody who is a Pakistani. They are in the United States of America, and for whatever reason, the United States of America decides that I don't want this person here, and so we're going to remove them from the United States of America. And let's say the US moved them to Turkey. So in Turkey, that person would now become a third country national because they are coming from a country that they're not a national of, so they're not a United States citizen, and they are being sent to a country that they're also not a citizen of, which is Turkey. So that is what a third country national means. So it could be any citizen that is in a country moving to a country that is not their domicile, right? So that's what it means. And so we are going to look at, I'm going to try as best as I can to contextualize the issue and try to kind of like smooth out some of the confusion that arose as a result of the way in which the information came to light and how did the government seek to handle that information. Of course, I am going to endeavor to be as impartial as I can, but in this specific episode, I am obliged, right, given the paucity of information surrounding the deal, to proffer my opinions, right? So while I will lay the facts as they are presented, I will also offer my opinions with respect to those facts in an effort to contextualize the facts and bring some clarity to the situation, because for the most part there's a lot of uncertainty about what obtains with respect to this deal, because in my view, and this is my opinion, I believe that the Minister of National Security lied about this deal, and that is why there is so much confusion. So there was a video that was so the White House did a press conference on the 26th of, was it the 26th, either the 25th or the 26th of April 2025, and I think that was to commemorate, every US president, they have their 100 days, so they have like 100 days to get some stuff done, and so it was this 100-day mark that they did a live. If you go to the White House YouTube channel and you go to the live tab and you scroll down, you'll see, I think it's about 1 hour and 44 minutes, and in the, 2 hours and 44 minutes, and in the 1 hour and 40-minute mark, Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State, began to speak.
We are actively searching for other countries to take people from third countries. So we are actively, not just El Salvador, we are working with other countries to say, we want to send you some of the most despicable human beings to your countries. Will you do that as a favor to us? And the further away from America, the better, so they can't come back across the border. I'm not apologetic about it. We are doing that. The president was elected to keep America safe and to get rid of a bunch of perverts and pedophiles and child rapists out of our country.
And one of the objective of this kind of agreement is to encourage people to self-deport, right? So it's like, okay, you do not want to end up in some far-flung country, on the other side of the continent. So you will willingly decide that, okay, well, I don't want to be caught up in this third country national agreement that the US has. So I'm going to voluntarily leave the United States of America, right? Because the geographic dispersion will act as a deterrent to persons who are in the United States and or quote unquote undesirables. And it's the primary objective of the third country national agreement is to act as some kind of deterrent for these quote unquote undesirables. So if Washington was actively searching for partner countries, how did Jamaica became a part of this plan? But before we go into that, I want to bring some context to the conversation with respect to the video of Marco Rubio, because at first I thought the video was doctored. So, because I saw it on Newsweek, I saw it on Michael Abraham's page, and I'm like, with AI, and this is one of the things too, when in the age of AI, it is, you can't believe your own eyes. And so I did not want to be one of those persons that is, passing around a video and the video was doctored. So I wanted to find the original video, like where is this actually what he said? Because a similar situation happened with Kamala Harris several years ago, before the US elections, where they have her saying stuff that she did not say. And that the video was widely distributed. And I'm like, I need to see, I'm not going to just listen to a 1-minute clip. I need to see the whole video. I need to see the context. And when I went and I watched the video, she never said those things. And so I was cautious. So I went to the United States, the government of the United States. The White House has a YouTube channel. It's called the White House, I think. And so I found the video. It was a live. At first I was searching on the video and I couldn't find it. But then I did some research and I realized, it was actually a live. So I went to the live tab on the YouTube page and I found the video. And I think it was at the 1 hour 40 mark. So Rubio actually said, our most despicable, whatever, he said that. No, of course, it's a cause for concern for the receiving country, in this case Jamaica, to say, okay, well, if you're going to be sending criminals here, while the Minister of Justice is saying, no, we're not agreeing to, so it's a contradiction. So we have the Secretary of State saying the objective here is to send the most violent, vicious, and horrible people that we don't want, that are illegal immigrants, and we don't want them here, right? To these countries that we have third country national arrangement with, while our government is saying, no, these people are not criminals. These are just people who were found to be illegally in the United States of America, whether by virtue of entering illegally or by virtue of overstaying under whatever visa they had, and they are now being repatriated or deported from the United States, but they're not criminals in the sense that we would understand criminality, right? So you have two conflicting views being expressed here, and so the question was like who is lying? And the answer to that is Rubio, because if you watch the video, Donald Trump was sitting next to Marco Rubio, and this is how the Trump administration has characterized illegal immigrants in the United States of America. So it does not mean that these people are actually vicious and rapists and horrible people. This is how it's the dehumanization of people, so that whatever you do to them, the general masses will be neutered in terms of whether or not they would mount a response or any objection to what you're doing to these undesirables. So you have to dehumanize these people before you can do inhumane things to them, and that is what the Trump administration has done, right? Now, will there be criminals in these, among the people that are deported? Of course there will be, but will the US be actively deporting the most vile, vicious people to these countries that have TCN agreements with the US? No. This is just how the Trump administration has chosen to characterize people who are in the United States illegally, whether the only crime that they have committed is to be in the US illegally, whether entering illegally or overstaying, they're welcome, but they're otherwise law-abiding citizens in the sense that we understand law-abiding citizens. So they didn't break any law except the immigration law of you entered illegally or you overstayed your welcome, right? So it's a little bit of a nuance, and so we don't want to run with the video and not understand the context or the political context in which that specific conversation was being had. They're just trying to dehumanize all illegal immigrants or all immigrants, so to speak, so that when they undertake to deport these persons, then the international community at large and the people in the United States of America will be disinterested in whatever the US government decides to do with these quote-unquote savages and vicious criminals. Right, so we're going to move on now to the idea of who approached whom. So, of course, the Gleaner alleged that it was in receipt of or was shown a diplomatic note. Now, a diplomatic note is just a letter, right? So if I write a letter to you, as a regular person, it's just called a letter. I write you a letter, you read the letter, and that's the end of the story. But I guess communication between governments are classified as diplomatic note. So the Gleaner was made privy to this diplomatic note, and in that diplomatic note, it alleges that Audrey Marks attended a conference in Miami. I believe it was sometimes this year in May, if I'm not mistaken, and the purpose of that visit was to lobby the US government in getting qualified persons to come to Jamaica, because at the very least, the Andrew Holness-led administration is purporting that Jamaica has a shortage of skilled labor. And so Miss Marks' visit to the US was in respect of that. And the diplomatic note alleges, according to the Jamaica Gleaner, that it was Miss Marks who broached the subject of the Third Country Nationals Agreement, and that is where the 10,000 figure came from with respect to the number of deportees that will enter Jamaica during the course of this memorandum of understanding. So, the issue is that there is a contradiction. Dana Scott Morrison did an interview with the Jamaica Information Service, and in that interview, she claims that these are two separate
So the Third Country Nationals Program, anyone who looks it up, you'll see that it is in place in many countries, and it is a US initiative. So the US would have come to us on that Third Country Nationals Program. Now, there's a conflation of that with a discussion that would have happened with Minister Marks in relation to exploring skilled laborers coming to Jamaica. And as you know, we've been looking at at nurses and doctors, for example, coming from the Philippines, also looking at Ghana, looking at other countries, Nigeria also. And so there was a conversation at one point about whether or not there was an opportunity around highly skilled persons. Now, that became conflated with TCN. And there was actually a lot of work, I'm told, that had to go into clarifying between the two countries that TCN is completely different from any kind of skilled workers program. And what would have been looked at is how can we maybe get some more skilled workers? And at the same time, there were discussions around how can we get more of or farm workers and or hotel workers that are going to the US, and we know those programs tend to be oversubscribed. Is there an opportunity for Jamaicans to also be working in the US? So it was a more holistic conversation, but at one point it did get conflated with the third country nationals program.
While the Gleaner is saying, our source, we saw this diplomatic cable from a source at the United States Embassy in Jamaica, and that diplomatic cable is saying explicitly that it was Marx who approached the US government and brought this idea, right? And so, who approached whom? There is no way we're going to know who approached whom, but we can, and this is where my opinion is going to be proffered, right? We can look at the circumstances. You know, back when we went to school and we want to understand the meaning of a word, you have this word, you've never seen the word before, and you don't know what the meaning is, then you're going to read the sentence or the paragraph, and the paragraph or the sentence would contain clues as to the context in which the word is used, and based on the context, you can derive the meaning, right, of that word. And so that is what I am going to attempt to do here. Now, generally, this does not always obtain, but generally, when there's any agreement, whether it is a treaty, a memorandum of understanding, or any other agreement between two nations, it is because they are leveraging something. Both parties usually get something out of the deal. It is unusual, even though it is not impossible, for you to have a bilateral agreement in which only one party benefits. Because it makes no sense. At the end of the day, the people of Jamaica will be asking, what are we getting out of this? How are we benefiting? It cannot be a one-sided thing. No one enters into in an agreement that only one side is benefiting from. That does not happen. There's always a benefit that you're deriving from the deal, right? So that is the first context clue. The second context clue is that Miss Marx was in the United States of America, and it was with respect to speaking with people in the Department of State, or Homeland Security, about getting skilled workers to come to Jamaica. And so if we're looking at you going to a country like the United States of America and you're asking for something, common sense would dictate that you're offering something in return. So she went to the US and like, hey, we need people, Jamaica has a shortage of skilled labor, and we need people from the United States that are skilled to come and work in Jamaica. And of course the US would naturally ask, okay, what are we getting out of this? That only makes sense. It would not, it would strain credulity for a country like Jamaica, who is not even a blip on the map, to come to a big country like the United States of America and asking for something, and the US is not getting anything in return. So that is the next context. So we were asking first, right? Then the US has a legal conundrum with respect to its immigration system. It has a border crisis, it has an immigration issue, and it is trying to resolve that issue. However, there are legal loopholes that the Trump administration has to contend with. And the third country national agreement gives it a kind of workaround to some of the legalities that it has to contend with. So that is the next context, right? So we must now put the thing together and determine what is more likely. So we're not making a definitive pronouncement, but we're looking at the context in which the conversation is being had, the context in which the circumstances arose, and we are using the context to make inferences about what we think happened. So if Jamaica has a situation where it needs skilled workers and it approached the United States of America to get said workers, it follows from that that Jamaica would offer something to the United States in return. If the United States of America has 20 standing third country national agreements with 20 countries, and Jamaica is not one of those countries, and here is Jamaica coming to the table with his hands stretched out asking for something, is it more probable than not that the United States of America would say, okay, fine, we don't have a problem with sending some of our skilled labor to Jamaica, but we have this immigration crisis and we're looking for countries to deport some of these people that are in the United States illegally. Does that make sense? Is it more probable than not that something like that would obtain? And so in order to answer the question, who approached whom, does it make sense based on the context in which this situation arose that Audrey Marks, having given the directive, because Audrey Marks' ministry is within the office of the Prime Minister under the Ministry of Job Creation and whatever. He's given so many ministries, I can't keep up with them. But she's operating out of the office of the Prime Minister. And I am sure she did not arbitrarily take up herself and leave Jamaica and went to the United States to negotiate a deal unilaterally. It must have been at the behest and the directive of the Prime Minister. So she would have been given certain... Of course, if you're going to ask for something, you is like, okay, what can we offer them if they ask for something in return? And of course, the government or the Prime Minister in this sense, be like, okay, this is what we can offer. So, is it more probable than not that when Audrey Marks went to the United States of America, right, to this security conference in Miami, and she's like, hey, we need some people from the United States that are skilled to come and work in Jamaica, and in exchange, we will enter into a memorandum of understanding with the United States of America to accept some of these deportees, because we realize that you have a immigration crisis. Would this not strengthen your bargaining power? Because remember, you cannot negotiate if you have no leverage. So how was Audrey Marks going to intrigue the United States of America to agree to this, to help us with our worker shortage without offering something in return? Right? So this is the context in which we're having that conversation, and this is the context in which I am now proffering my opinion to say, it is my belief, it is my considered view, that it is more probable than not that it was Jamaica who made the offer to the United States of America to accept these third country nationals in exchange for the United States helping Jamaica out with the skilled labor shortage that the Audrey Onis administration is purporting that Jamaica has. But that's a totally different topic for another video. All right, so I asked the question when I just started this video that if my friend is engaged in an illegal activity and seeks to now rope me into that illegal activity, should I comply? That brings us to this legal brick wall. I talked about the legal conundrum. So I want to read a little bit from the judge's dissent, or it's called a partial summary judgment, and it is... they're just using the initials of the plaintiffs. So it's DVD et al. Plaintiffs versus the US Department of Homeland Security et al., who are the defendants. And it is in the United States District Court, the District of Massachusetts. And it says, memorandum and order on defendant's motion to dismiss and on plaintiff's motion for partial summary judgment. So I'm going to be reading now. This case is about whether the government may, without notice, deport a person to the wrong country or a country where he is likely to be prosecuted or tortured, thereby depriving that person of the opportunity to seek protections to which he would be undisputedly entitled. The Department of Homeland Security has adopted a policy whereby it may take people and drop them off in parts unknown in so-called third countries, and as long as the department doesn't already know that there is someone standing there waiting to shoot them, that's fine. This is what the judge is saying. I'm reading verbatim. It is not fine, nor is it legal. Congress made it the policy of the United States not to expel, extradite, or otherwise effect the involuntary return of any person to a country whether that person would be in danger of being subjected to torture. Congress decided that the government may not remove someone to a country where her life or freedom would be threatened on account of her race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. These are our laws, and it is with profound gratitude for the unbelievable luck of being born in the United States of America that this court affirms these and our nation's bedrock principle that no person in this country may be deprived of their life, liberty, or property without due process of law. It may surprise the reader to learn that, in its most candid moments, the government agrees. As recently as May 24, 2025, during the pendency of this very litigation, the Department of Justice told the Supreme Court, quote, we would have to give the person notice of the third country and give them the opportunity to raise a reasonable fear of torture or prosecution in that third country, end quote. That was not a remarkable admission, but rather a well-established, decades-old application of the due process principle. I think we have enough here. So essentially, Judge Murphy is saying that the third country national agreement that the Trump administration is seeking to have with other countries is illegal and it violates the due process of law. And so the rebuttal that the Trump administration has given is that these third countries have given the US assurances that these persons these deportees will not be prosecuted, they will be treated according to the international conventions on human rights. However, this is an attempt by the Trump administration to circumvent the due process clause in the United States Constitution. And what they want to do is to deprive the person of the right to mount a defense or an appeal to say, hey, I cannot be deported to this country because I am in fear of my life. So if we deport you to another country, that defense is no longer available to you. You can't say, well, I'm afraid to go to Turkey because you're not from Turkey. Nobody knows you there. There's no fear of being prosecuted. And we have assurances from Turkey that they're not going to do anything to you. Right? But of course, it's just lip service because if the US, once the person is deported from the United States of America, the US, that's it. They don't care about you after that fact. So whatever that country does to you, notwithstanding whatever assurances they gave to the US government, then the US would not intervene to say, oh, wait a minute, we deport this person here and you promised us that you would not mistreat them, and here you are mistreat them. Please stop it. No, the US is not going to do anything. You were deported to a third country, right? And they lock you up in maximum security prison, tough luck. That's it. They don't care what happens to you after you have been deported to these far-flung countries that you have no ties and no relations with, which is barbarous and inhumane. Right? So, that brings us to the question of, is Jamaica just a transit point? Right? Now, Dr. Horace Chan insists that this is just a temporary stop. Right? And that, the people will only be here for a maximum of 30 days. Jamaica will only accept 25 deportees every 2 weeks. And however, among the cohorts of deportees, persons can seek asylum in Jamaica. And they're saying, where the person seeks asylum in Jamaica, then the US would no longer be responsible for that person. And so let's say the asylum was denied, the case was denied, Jamaica doesn't find any justiciable reason to grant the person asylum, then Jamaica would now be responsible for that person to transport them to whichever country they were supposed to be deported in the first place. Once they have initiated a process of asylum, Jamaica would be obliged under international law to hear that case. So however long that takes, that person is no longer responsibility of the US government. Because initially the US would deport the person to Jamaica, and then Jamaica, at the expense of the United States of America, would deport that person to their original country. So let's just say you are from Trinidad and Tobago. You were found to be illegally in the United States of America, so the US deported you to Jamaica. Then, after some time, we don't know how long, the US would then, Jamaica would then deport you, well, not deport you, but transition you from Jamaica to Trinidad and Tobago, right? And all of that, from my understanding, would be at the expense of the US government through this IMO, International Immigration, whatever. It's actually some international organization that deals with immigration, right? The US is going to engage their services, and through them, that's how the payment would. So, of course, the US is going to ship these people to Jamaica, deport these people to Jamaica. They're going to be here for a time no more than 30 days, and then afterwards they will be sent to their the country that they're actually a resident or where they were born or whatever, right? And that all of that would be at the expense of the US. But if those persons decide that, okay, wait, I don't want to leave Jamaica, I'm filing for asylum, Jamaica is obliged legally to hear the case, to see if they have a credible case for seeking asylum in Jamaica. Once that happens, the US is no longer responsible for that person. That person now becomes the responsibility of the Jamaican government. And of course, if the appeal is granted, the person will stay in Jamaica. But if it is not granted, they would now have to be transitioned to their country of origin. And that would no longer be at the expense of the United States government. It would be at the expense of the Jamaican government. Another thing is that Jamaica is depending on the United States of America to screen these persons. Because of course, when you have these where are you going to get information from about these people? Because they're not from Jamaica. Right? So we as a country have zero information on who these people are. So you are now relying on the United States of America, on the government of the United States of America to properly vet and screen these people. But that is not going to happen. Why? Because what I believe, and this is my opinion now, what I believe is going to obtain here is that the people that will be sent to Jamaica are going to be people that they catch at the border. And because they don't want these people to go before, because remember they're trying to create a legal workaround, they don't want to give these people any chance to go before a judge to say, I need asylum or I am afraid to go back to my country and I have to stay in the United States of America. That is what the Trump administration is trying to prevent. They don't want these persons to go through the legal system. So what is going to happen is that when they catch them at the border, they are going to just board them off to a third country national, a country that they have a third country national agreement with. And they would, by virtue of this TCN agreement, be operating within the bounds of the law, but barely. So the US will not have any idea and cannot therefore give any assurance that these people are not criminals or whatever they won't know. And therefore the government of Jamaica would not know either. So you are not going to know who the US is sending because the US themselves. Because if somebody is coming across the border, the US don't know this person. They don't know anything about you. And they're not going to stop to figure out what you're entering illegally, we caught you, we don't care where you're coming from, we just want to ship you off to Jamaica. Or one of these countries that we have the third country national agreement with. And the receiving country now, that is supposed to be a transit point. Of course, they would not know, and they can't treat these people like criminals, remember, because they're not criminals, as far as you know. So, and as I think I heard the Minister of National Security say that when they come, they can go wherever they want to go, which makes no goddamn sense. That's what he says. Like when they come, they can go wherever they want to go. Let's say I was deported to Jamaica, and I'm a Trinidadian. And I don't want to stay where they want me to stay. I can just go book a hotel and like, okay, well, when did they come for you guys to send us off to Trinidad? I just go. Which makes no goddamn sense. So Jamaica is relying on the US to verify that these people are not criminals or whatever the case may be. But based on how this will be done, it's catch and release. The US government, whoever they catch at the border, they will just put them on a plane and ship them off to a country that they have a TCN agreement with. Therefore, the US will not be able to credibly provide any background information on these people with respect to their criminal history, whether or not they have any criminal antecedents. They won't be able to tell you that because they don't know these people. These are not people that were living in, these are not going to be, in my view, people that were in the United States of America for 5 years and finally ICE catches up to them. And so, of course, they would have been here. And you would have had some information on them. They're not going to know. And moreover, when you have illegal immigrants, even if they are criminals, remember, acts of criminality are only a matter of public record if you were caught and convicted. If this person has been going around committing crimes and the police never catch them, where are you going to get information on their criminal? There's not going to be any information because they're illegal immigrants for a reason. They're not in the system. And if they're not in the system and they're able to stay under the radar, you do not know what activities they would have been engaged in prior to you catching them and deporting them. You would know. So there is no way that the US can credibly provide information on these people because one, it's going to be people that they literally catch at the border and they're just going to try to avoid the whole system of, going before a judge and whatever the case, pleading a case and just ship them off to a country that they have a TCN agreement with. And we have seen documented evidence. There was cases where, by virtue of administrative errors, innocent people were transported to far-flung regions of the friggin' planet and placed in maximum security prison. We had a case of a Jamaican, Orville Etoria, I believe, right, who was sent to some far-flung country by mistake, and he was placed in maximum security prison. And the government of Jamaica had to go through a lot of rigmarole to get this guy out of the situation that the United States government, by virtue of their barbarity in how they are electing to deal with illegal immigrants, it was their error. And of course, nothing happened. It's like, okay, well, I shipped you off to a godforsaken country and you were treated inhumanely. You were not a criminal. You did nothing wrong. It was our error and nothing came. Because what are you going to do? It's the United States of America. What the hell are you going to do? So to the extent that the government of Jamaica has decided to be a party to this illegal, because what they're doing is illegal, right? The matter is before the U.S. courts as we speak, and they are still, going along with this thing, and it seems as if there is no body who is trying to bring some kind of sense to the issue, and it just, it's like, will Jamaica be truly a transit point for these people, right? Or will we inherit the consequences of the United States administrative failure? So that brings us to the question of who pays when things go wrong. So we have already established that the United States of America will cover the initial cost of deportation. So the US will, of course, put them on a plane, bear that cost, deport them to Jamaica. They will be in Jamaica for a period no longer than 30 days. The United States will cover that cost, and then Jamaica will transfer them to their final destination, and the United States will bear that cost. But what if things goes wrong? Because what it seems to me here is that Jamaica is assuming responsibility for anything that happens in the long term, right? So we are the ones who are responsible for these people once they land in Jamaica, because we are now the host country of those persons, and we are now obliged to ensure that we adhere to the conventions of the international conventions on human rights. So the US has committed to covering initial costs that are associated with temporary accommodation and supportive services, and I said they will be doing this through the International Organization of Migration. And so, of course, at first glance, it doesn't appear that this is anything to write home about. The situation seems manageable. However, we have to consider that, because if these people have any sense, when you come to Jamaica, especially if your country is not a country that you really want to go back to, then you would seek asylum, you would file for asylum in Jamaica, at the very least. Even if you're not intending to stay in Jamaica, even if you know that the asylum claim will be denied, it still gives you more time in Jamaica, because Jamaica will now have to hear your claim. Jamaica will have to facilitate that claim in its legal system. And until the court makes a declaration on your claim for asylum, you will be housed at the expense of the Jamaican people. So why would you not just take a vacation in Jamaica and just file for asylum, whether you want to stay here, yes or no? Because at the end of the day, even if you file for asylum, you can always leave and go back to your country anyway. There's no law that prevents you from leaving. There's none, right? So this is where the crux of the matter lay. And, of course, there are complications that we perhaps have not foreseen that will arise once these people enter the legal system. They're filing for asylum, they're making certain claims, whatever the situation. Because, of course, if you have people saying, you're shipping me back to Cuba, I cannot go back to Cuba, otherwise they're going to kill me. And the US, because this is what is going to happen, Let's just say somebody is from Cuba, and the person is like, I cannot go back to Cuba, they're going to kill me. The US catches them, ship them off to Jamaica. Jamaica cannot ship them off to Cuba. That's not how it works. Because if the threat is imminent and if there's a clear and present danger to this person being deported back to their country, you cannot deport them there. Under international law, you can't do that. So what is going to happen? Because that was not ventilated in the press conference that the government had. So when these people come to Jamaica, the US deports them to Jamaica, but the terminal country, they cannot go because they have a justiciable reason as to why they cannot be repatriated back to their home country. What is Jamaica going to do about it? Because they are now in Jamaica, they don't want to be in Jamaica. The US just decided, okay, well, we can send 25 people to Jamaica, so we caught 500 people, 25 is going to Jamaica, 25 is going to Guyana, 50 is going there, 30 is going there, 100 is going there, and so they just ship you all over the place. But when you get to that country, that transit country, your issue still arises. I cannot go back to my country, otherwise they're going to torture me or kill me for whatever reason. And it is a justiciable reason. What do you do then? Because that does not seem to be something that the government of Jamaica has considered. Oh, we don't want people fleeing persecutions are generally criminals. Because we see in these democracies, when you speak truth to power, the government demonizes you and may seek to silence you by bringing the full force of the law down on you for things that are perfectly legal, but at the end of the day, they wield the machinery of power and they can do whatever they want. So if you're fleeing persecution and you end up in the United States of America, and the US is saying, well, we don't want you here, tough luck, right? But because we don't want you to go through our system, because of course the courts are going to grant you asylum because you have a justiciable complaint, we're going to ship you off to Jamaica, right? So we can circumvent that process. But when the person gets to Jamaica, they still have that reason as to why Jamaica cannot now ship them back to their own country because they're in genuine fear for their lives. What will Jamaica do then? And who is going to be responsible for facilitating that? Because you can't send the person back. Is the person going to stay in Jamaica and plead for asylum in the United States? Because that doesn't make any sense. So you see the complication. And so these are some of the things that we are talking about. Because at this point, the person is not just transiting through Jamaica, right? They become a subject of legal proceedings that requires hearings and investigations and appeals and administrative oversight. And all of this takes money. Who is going to be responsible? And how will that be facilitated? Because if the person is going to the United States of America to seek asylum, they are taken up by ICE. And there is no due process. So ICE catches them because they were entering the United States illegally, right, to then seek asylum. You ship them off to Jamaica. They still have the legitimate reason as to why they can't go back to their country, right? So now you have to investigate, it has to go through the court system, right? The person is not seeking asylum in Jamaica, they don't want to be here. They are seeking asylum in the United States of America. So how is it? So they're going to stay in Jamaica and file for asylum in the United States of America, and even if they do that, who is going to be responsible for them while they are here? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. But of course, this does not seem to have been in the contemplation of the people who claim to be competent enough to act on the behalf of the Jamaican people. The National Security Minister, Dr. Horace Chan, right, he did acknowledge that if asylum claims are denied, Jamaica becomes responsible for repatriating these people to their own country. And of course, this creates financial liabilities that extend beyond the temporary accommodations that the minister alluded to that were part of the ongoing negotiations. Right? Now, of course, the government is saying, there's a 94% return rate that are observed. So these 20 countries that have the third country national agreement with the United States of America, we have observed that 94% of the persons who were deported to these transit countries have been successfully repatriated to their home countries. But then this critical focus has to be on the 6%. Like, okay, what happened to these 6% and who was responsible for them? And what were the costs associated with retaining those 6%? And what were the circumstances surrounding the 6% that were not successfully repatriated? That is where our concern lies. Right? Because those individuals would present unresolved legal, financial, and humanitarian obligations, such as housing, healthcare, legal representation, detention, and removal costs. And it is more probable than not that all of these costs will be borne by the people of Jamaica. And I cannot understand why the government of Jamaica would purport to undertake this kind of burden without consulting the people of Jamaica. Professor Anthony Clayton has raised concerns that Jamaica may face an impossible humanitarian dilemma, because if individuals claim they will face persecution if they return home, Jamaica must either accept responsibility for their protection or risk violating international human rights obligations by forcing their removal. So if the arrangement, therefore, transfers more than people, this arrangement also transfers the responsibility that the United States government would have for these people who are claiming asylum onto the government vicariously, the people of Jamaica vicariously, through the government of Jamaica. So the question that we have to ask is, does this memorandum of understanding shift the long-term risks from the United States of America onto the people of Jamaica? That is the question that we need to pose to the Minister of National Security and Peace. And that brings us to the final segment of this episode. What does Jamaica get out of it? And of course, when Zara Burton asked the question in one of the press briefings, the response of the Minister of Justice is that the question is irrelevant. The United States has been a long-standing partner of the Government of Jamaica, and we do not enter into arrangements on a quid pro quo basis. I'm like, but okay, yeah, you have your friends and your allies, but usually when people come knocking, they're giving you something. That's how it works. Like, I don't understand what Oristan is at. Why is he claiming that the question is irrelevant? I don't understand. An agreement usually means that both parties or the parties to the agreement each derive benefit severally. I don't understand this man sometimes. Sometimes I think this guy is getting senile. And so, when he's on the podium and they ask him these questions, he's just impatient and he can't bother. And he's like, I should be home drinking coffee and sitting on the couch with my dog watching the news or reading the paper. I don't want to be here. And he's like, well, sir, resign and go sit down and come out of his sight. We don't want to see you either. Because what do you mean the question is irrelevant? What benefit is Jamaica getting from this deal? There are no clear benefits that was articulated by anybody from the Andrew Holness administration. Horace Chang suggests that asking what Jamaica gains misses the point because the United States remain one of Jamaica's most important bilateral partners, right? And I guess he is dismissing the notion that most international agreements usually involve trade-offs. Why would the United States of America come to a negotiating table if it is not willing to negotiate? That doesn't make any sense. If it is asking us to do something, I am sure, given its vast resources, and we have a pressing issue, the shortage of skilled labor that they are alleging that the country have, which I think is bullshit, right? Why would we not then leverage that? But the government is saying that never happened. These are two issues that are being conflated, right? But when we look at other countries that the United States of America engaged in these third country national agreements, they had clear benefits that they could tell their people, like, okay, this is what you're getting out of it. So why would Jamaica be the exception? I don't understand. There are 20 other countries before Jamaica that entered into these arrangements, and they have benefits. They're like, okay, well, fine, sure, no problem, but this is what you have to do for us. And the US is like, okay, cool, fine, as long as we can send these people to you. Why would Jamaica then be the only country out of the 21 countries now, since Jamaica has already signed the agreement? It signed the agreement on June 16 and June 10, 2026. Why would Jamaica be the only country out of the 21 countries that the United States engaged that is not getting anything out of the deal? That makes absolutely no sense, right? Guyana linked its migration discussions to the labor shortage that it has and its economic needs. And Jamaica is saying that it is facing a labor shortage. And I am sure Jamaica, because the minister pointed to other countries in the Caribbean that has the same arrangement with the United States of America. So of course the government of Jamaica would have been sufficiently aware or seized of the facts relating to those agreements and understand that these countries negotiated in some benefit for their country. Guyana specifically leveraged the U.S. desire to have people to have that country be used as a transit point to say, hey, we have a labor shortage and we have some other economic needs and we need you to help us out with that. And the U.S. agreed. Jamaica too has a labor shortage and we do have a situation in terms of the visa crisis. And you're telling me that the U.S. come to you because that's what the government is. The government is saying they did not initiate. We are conflating what Andrew Marks did with this third country national agreement, even though they did not say to whom the initial request was made, because that would make sense. If you're saying when the US approached us, who did the United States approach? Who got the diplomatic cable? Can you show us that document where a request came from the United States of America? Because even if you have a conversation, okay, you went to a conference, you spoke to the Secretary of State, he would then have to send you an official diplomatic note formally requesting this aid from the Jamaican government, and then based on that diplomatic note you would then compile a team and begin to engage in discussions as to how the memorandum of understanding is to be framed. Does that make sense? But they have not said who the US government, who in Jamaica did the US government, because when you say the government of Jamaica is not an entity of themselves, people work in the government. So of course it would be somebody in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that would make sense, or the ambassador to the United States of America if we still have one, because the last time I checked Anthony Sanders was it, and now he's at NARA. And I don't recall them replacing the ambassadors, or maybe we don't have one, but at the end of the day, it would be somebody from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that the US would have approached. But they did, because if that was the case, I'm sure they would have said, okay, we receive a diplomat, the minister, such and such in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs receive a diplomatic cable from the department, from the Secretary of State, or wherever, Department of Homeland Security, whatever, and then the discussion took off from there. But he's saying, oh, we did not approach the US approached us. But you can't provide any specifics or any details, and these are not things that would require you. These are not things that you would not be able to disclose to the Jamaican people to assuage whatever concerns they have regarding this deal. Antigua and Barbuda imposed strict limits in terms of numerical amounts. The Dominican Republic adopted exclusion reflecting domestic priority, right? But for some reason, Jamaica don't have nothing. Or the US came and asked us to take these people and we just decide to agree. That makes absolutely no goddamn sense. And so this is what has largely fueled the controversy surrounding this third country national agreement, because the Minister of National Security, based on his utterances, is not really inspiring any confidence in the people of Jamaica that what he's saying is true. And of course, you know, when we look at the way that the Secretary of State has characterized these agreements, of course, it becomes a cause for concern. And also we have to consider the sovereignty of Jamaica with respect to the conditions of this agreement. And I do not understand how the government of Jamaica, we have already signed the agreement, you know. It's already signed. How the government of Jamaica signed such an agreement that has all these implications for Jamaica without any public consultation. We must remember that the government is a steward of the people, and the government is engaging in the business of the people. Therefore, whatever the government undertakes to do, it must be in the best interest of the Jamaican people. And so the question that naturally arises from that is, how is this third country national agreement, by way of a memorandum of understanding that the Andrew Holness administration has engaged in with the United States of America to accept their deportees, how is that in the best interest of the Jamaican people? What benefits are we deriving? To the extent that we have a relationship with the United States of America is a moot point. We are in the backyard of the US. They have no choice but to have a relationship with us. The relationship in and of itself is nothing to write home about. The US has a relationship with almost everybody. But those relationships are often within the realm of, I want something, tell me what you want in return. In order, if I am to get this from you, what do you want in return? That is how it always works. That's how it has always been. There's no country here doing anybody any favors. That's not how it works. Every time you do, even when they provide aid, people don't understand. They come with conditions. When you go to the IMF and you borrow money, remember you have to pay back the IMF money with interest, and they're still making stipulations as to how that money is to be spent. None of these negotiations are like, what would you be negotiating if you're not benefiting from it? It makes no goddamn sense. What is there to negotiate if you're not deriving any benefit from it? So, you know, this is a very serious issue, and I think that, I believe, it is my opinion, that the Minister of National Security lied about who approached whom and about the benefits that Jamaica will derive from this memorandum of understanding that it has signed with the United States of America. Because let us just take the government's word for it. Okay, fine, we're not getting anything out of it. What does that say about a small nation like Jamaica, where the United States of America is basically usurping our own sovereignty and saying, hey, you're going to have to take these people whether you like it or not? Because essentially that's what it means. We were strong-armed by the government of the United States of America to take these people. Even though what the government of the United States of America is purporting to do by deporting these people to third countries is illegal in the United States of America. And a sovereign nation is not obliged to facilitate another country that is engaged in the illegal deportation of citizens. And that is what Jamaica is doing, and all the other countries that have signed on to this frigging agreement. It makes no sense. If you are committing a crime, I am not legally obliged to participate in that crime and facilitate you in your criminal activity. And that is what the government of Jamaica is doing by virtue of them signing this third country national agreement. Or at the very least, it raises serious question about the sovereignty of small nation states like Jamaica, where you have a superpower like the United States of America that can just come in and dictate to you what it wants, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Nationwide 90 FM made some allegations with respect to that. Cliff Hughes went on Nationwide and said, well, the US was threatening to revoke visas if we did not sign this memorandum of understanding. And what they don't understand is that, okay, I'm sure this is coming from the JLP. If what Cliff Hughes is saying is true, then it simply means that the minister lied in Parliament when he was asked by Mark Golding if there is any benefit or detriment to the Jamaican people arising out of this deal. And he said, no. We are friends with the United States of America, and they asked us to do them a favor, and that is what we're doing. This is not a quid pro quo, and the question is irrelevant. It is not germane, because the US has been a long-standing partner. So no, they did not threaten us, and no, we did not approach them. That is what the Minister of National Security and Peace said. So if our remarks did indeed approach the US, it simply means that Horace Strang lied. If, as Nationwide is reporting, the US threatened to revoke visas of Jamaican diplomats if Jamaica did not sign this agreement, then the Minister of National Security lied in the Parliament. And there has to be consequences of that. There has to be. So whichever way you take it, Dr. Horace Strang would have lied in Parliament and would have lied to the people of Jamaica with respect to this memorandum of understanding. And I believe we need to get the truth about who approached whom, because it goes directly to the credibility of the Minister of National Security and the Jamaican government. Because remember, Dana Scott Morrison, or Dana Dixon, whatever the hell she named, the Minister of Education, went on JIS and said that we are conflating the two issues. So she would have known, or ought to have known, that either one, Audrey Mark was the one that approached the United States of America and brought the subject of a third country national agreement, or two, the United States of America was threatening the government of Jamaica to revoke visas if we did not sign that memorandum of understanding. So she too would have lied. So you're looking at two ministers that, if it is a case where the US did not approach us, they lied. There is no ambiguity surrounding that. They would have blatantly lied, not only in Parliament, but to the Jamaican people. And there has to be consequences for that. I am sure there are consequences of that. I am sure there would have been breach of some standing order. I'm not, of course, privy to the standing order. Neither have I read them. I'm not au fait with any of the standing orders of the House. But I am sure that this is an impeachable offense. So we need to get to the bottom of this thing. We need the government of Jamaica to proffer proof to the people of Jamaica as to who approached whom. Because it makes absolutely no sense that the United States of America would come to Jamaica and say, hey, we want you to accept these third country nationals, but you're not getting anything out of it, when they have 20 prior deals with 20 other countries under the same arrangements, and those countries derived benefits. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. It doesn't make any sense. So the people in the government is lying. I don't believe the US is telling it. I don't believe, the sources from the US embassy that is giving the information to the Jamaica Gleaner. I don't believe they're lying. I believe the government of Jamaica is lying. Specifically the Hunter Olens-led administration. They are lying. And this is very serious. It's one thing for you to go on the campaign trail and say, oh my God, you're going to get road, you're going to get water, you're going to get jobs. And then when you go and you forget the people, you forget the promises. Then you come in Parliament as a member of Parliament, a representative of the people, and blatantly misrepresent the facts. That's a totally different thing, because one is legal and one is illegal. I can always lie to you and say, well, when I go in, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and they do nothing. But once I am in the House and a matter of national importance to which I am charged with responding, my response must be accurate and true to the best of my knowledge. And so we need to pursue this issue. We need to know who approached whom. Because if it is the government of Jamaica that approached the United States of America, then we have two members of Parliament who blatantly lied to the Jamaican people, and they need to be removed from the Parliament, stripped of their position, and become regular citizens like everybody else. And on that note, thank you for watching. If you liked the episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And remember, we're trying to reach 1,000 followers. And once we get there, of course, I'll think about the Patreon and other stuff. So, until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next episode.